Hi, I'm Kat Wildman, and welcome to the Powered by Diversity podcast. Today, we're joined by Parisa, and we're talking all about sustainability and, in particular, all the things that you can do for free or cheap that also don't take a load of headspace and time to implement. As always, I was completely inspired by Parisa and all her millions of brilliant ideas for how to make sustainability accessible to everyone. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Parisa. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a very exciting episode. I always love talking to you about the work that you do. It's so interesting. And I swear I learn something new every single time I speak to you. And I get so inspired to do better things. So, do you want to introduce yourself to start off with?
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm Parisa Wright. I am a lawyer, business affairs lawyer in-house of 20 years, last 11 at ITV, where I then, after the school climate strikes in 2018, started getting involved in sustainability within the business and within production, as well as the PLC. And at the same time, I set up a sustainability charity, Greener and Cleaner, which works with communities in terms of engaging everyone, no matter what their background or interest, with different areas of sustainability in a really fun and practical way. But also we work with businesses and other organizations that want to embed sustainability into what they do.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. I remember when you very first set up your Instagram and I was following you. I was like, who is this person? Because you live near where I used to live. And I followed you ever since. And it is amazing how far you've come. Like you've done such brilliant things. So we're going to hear all about them. So first of all, why should organizations care about sustainability? And I know that that sounds like a really obvious question, but actually there's a lot more to it. Yes, it's the right thing to do, but just like EDI, there's a lot more to it, isn't it? So why should they care?
Absolutely. So I think the podcast is aimed at HR professionals, and I think we're all busy. HR professionals are no different to that. We've got a lot on our plates, lots of competing things vying for our time. There's two main reasons I would say that embedding sustainability within our businesses and making sure, even as HR professionals, that actually we're part of that process. And those two things come down to this. First of all, we know there's been loads of research that shows that especially millennials and Gen Zs, but also people of my generation in their 40s who've had this sort of epiphany over pandemic, really care about the values of the businesses that they work for. In 2023, Deloitte's published a report saying that climate change is a major concern for Gen Zs and millennials. And around 55% of the respondents said that they actually researched the brand's environmental impact before accepting a job. And over 40% of people were reporting that they already have or plan to change jobs because of the way that the business is approaching the environment and sustainability and due to climate concerns. So that just shows you how important it is to those who are looking at recruitment and retention to really think about sustainability and climate as a major factor for their actual job. The other thing is that, as many people will know, if you work for a FTSE 100 company or you're trying to provide goods and services to those companies, you really have to think about sustainability. The FTSE 100s already have to report. And also they are doing due diligence and only wanting to bring in organizations for subcontracting and to collaborate with them who can also show that they have sustainability and an awareness of waste and sensible targets around climate and net zero in what they do. So it really does give businesses, well, on one hand there's a legal obligation, on the other hand it gives a huge competitive advantage to the business that you work for to show that this is not a tick boxing exercise, this is an authentic part of the business's values. And I think those are the two main reasons. It's about recruitment and retention. People like me, I'm not a Gen Z or millennial, but over the pandemic, seeing my children, seeing my community, I started to realize actually what is important and where should I be putting my time? And should that all be about a business making more money, or should that be about a business making more money but doing good also, making money in an ethical way? or more ethical way. And I think a lot of people feel that way, especially those with children. And then we know that Gen Zs and millennials, they really have values at the heart of what they want out of a career, essentially. And so being able to accommodate that and show them actually that your business means business when it comes to climate and sustainability is really important.
Totally. I tell you what, I was speaking to a millennial the other day, no, a Gen Z the other day. And I was saying about EDI, and I said, your generation, it just feels like your generation just gets it, like it's in you. And you wake up in the morning and you care about EDI and you care about sustainability and you care about all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, we do. And when we go for interviews and when we meet companies who just don't get it and they're not doing anything, we're not going to tell them the reason why we're not going to come and work there is because of this and this, or it looks performative, or you're just ticking a box, whatever. We're just going to walk away. And that was the bit I was just thought, oh my gosh, I wonder how many organizations are even aware that they're missing out on talent,
And I mean, last year, again, LinkedIn did some other research and it showed that the vast majority of Gen Zs would actually be prepared to quit their jobs if the values of the new company that they were at didn't closely align with what they believed in. And millennials felt the same. And when they're exploring, moving to a new job or company, 60% of millennials and Gen Z said it was a deal breaker. The values element was a deal breaker for them. Yeah. So I know a lot of people aren't aware of this. And like, as we said, HR professionals have tons on their plate, so they can't always be looking out for this research. But there are organizations who are collecting in this data. You've got a great case study that you just shared there. And these are organizations that spent money to reach out to lots of people and get that feedback. And there's, some quite damning sort of percentages there in terms of it's not something that you can ignore anymore.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think a lot of the reasons that people are reticent to get right into sustainability are similar to EDI reasons. So, and also I don't think EDI and sustainability should be treated separately. I think they should be treated as one whole thing, but we'll get to that. Is that I think they think it's a big monolith and it's like eat the elephant, boil the ocean, whatever analogy you want to do, and it's going to be really expensive and it's going to be a whole thing. Like, oh my gosh, we need to stop everything that we're doing and focus in on this. But every time I speak to you, I get reassured that it's the everyday things that you can do that actually make so much of an impact. So talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess there's sort of two or three things. So first of all, there is the fact that as a business, there are lots of ways to improve the sustainability of your business that actually really boil down to reducing waste and therefore boil down to saving money rather than spending money. That is your energy, that is your travel, that is your physical stuff. And obviously, we know if we can fly less, if we can drive less, that can only be a good thing. Doing things remotely, obviously, that's more sustainable than going to a meeting across town or going to another country, etc. We know that sort of having ways of switching off the energy where we're not using it makes a difference. Same with water, same with so many things. Reducing waste reduces costs, essentially. And then also sort of getting the staff on board. So there's two things with regards to embedding it in the business. One is improves recruitment and retention. And the other thing is businesses will have their sustainability targets. So you can reach those sustainability targets much cheaper, much quicker, and with fewer PR disasters if you can embed sustainability into different points in your business. So it's not just about you turning around to people and going, oh, look, I know GDPR's come in and I know anti-bribery's coming in and I know modern slavery's come in and now there's a new thing, which is sustainability. And they'll go, like they always do, yeah, I can understand why that's a great thing, but I've been doing it like this for 20 years. That's additional work. And I think getting people to understand, for the people who are not the Gen Zs and millennials and excited about it, for them to understand actually by getting engaged with sustainability, you're helping us help you. So sort of some of the ways that you can sort of get that excitement and get it embedded in the business, which are cheap or free, is you can start adding sustainability to every agenda of every meeting. So whether it is your once a week senior leadership in the HR team meeting, or whether it's your particular brand meeting once a week, having a gender as a line item on that, where you at least discuss it and say, are there any sustainability issues for the projects that we're working on? What are we moving forward gradually this year, et cetera, is really powerful. Just having it as an agenda item, because, you know, maybe 1 week in 4, you don't have anything on there, but just raising it and saying, you know, should we be looking at this? Is there anything we should be thinking about, is really important. To be honest, in my ex-lawyer head, GDPR should be an agenda item as well. But anyway, sustainability is what I'm focusing on now. And then the other thing is a lot of us do green team of the month, green star of, you do the star of the month, the team of the month, etc. And what I did when we were in ITV was we tested with a couple of the labels, bringing in a green star of the month and a green team of the month. And so you show people that it is valued and it is celebrated when you are helping the business get to their sustainability target, and that it's just generally something that the business values. Forget about its sustainability targets. It values if a member of staff has gone and planted a forest, or if a member of staff has gone and found, you know, 100 wrecked bikes and fixed them up and given them out to charity, done something around sustainability, whether at home or in the business, it is valued and it is celebrated. And then also with teams who are finding new ways to be sustainable or making changes in their processes and doing it, I think shouting about that and celebrating that is really important. And even if you only start it in certain teams, once that starts working, other teams will want to do it as well. And I think that's really powerful. Even if you started just with your HR team, it's a really powerful way of sort of getting the culture embedded where sustainability is celebrated and truly an authentic part of the values and targets of the business. Then that brings you to things like other elements of what you offer as a business anyway. For example, your CSR, the charities that you work with and support. Are there any environmental charities, not necessarily even the massive brands, but actual sustainability or environmental charities that are based in the UK that are doing work that people can actually see what is happening as a result of that work in the UK? Because the temptation is always to go with a big brand, and sometimes that feels a bit faceless and it feels like a little bit of an issue, like it's an issue, but people don't really have a connection to it. Whereas if you can find local-ish projects, or even if they're just UK based, and ideally having that not just around nature, but having some maybe warm homes projects, or I don't know, other areas of sustainability, you know, perhaps helping people with food waste, perhaps people helping repair cafes. You know, obviously we've got a community hub in the Glades in Southeast London where we do amazing work, and we work with businesses there supporting our work around sustainability skills for the communities. But that's another thing. Following on from that, volunteering opportunities. If you are making recommendations to your staff on volunteering days, perhaps you can highlight some volunteering opportunities that actually relate to sustainability, ideally, obviously, within, you know, 45 minutes of the office, or if you know where most of your staff are, around there. Because again, that just shows again that actually this is part of who we are, and we're embedding it in every element. It's not just about the processes and procedures of how we run our business. It's in how we give to charity. It's in how we give our time. And that brings me on to our learning and development. So in HR, you're often involved in learning and development. And something I get involved in a lot is going and doing lunch and learns, doing brainstorms, doing workshops in businesses. And funnily enough, over 50% of the time, the people who bring in those workshops and events are actually HR teams and wellbeing teams and learning and development teams. They are not sustainability teams. They are not operational teams, because a lot of the workshops and lunch and learns that you can put on are about the individuals and their own sustainability and their own well-being. So it's go green, save money. I'm dreaming of a greener Christmas. Go green, get healthy. Warrior to warrior, deal with your eco-anxiety. So a lot of it is actually related to physical health, mental health, financial health. And then, yeah, there are also reduce the carbon footprint of your home and home office, you know, or, you know, reduce the carbon footprint of your travel, or, you know, all that sort of stuff. And by helping your staff on that lunch and learn side of things with the well-being elements and the personal sustainability elements, you're helping those of them that are not super excited about sustainability yet find a connection with sustainability and climate, which is personal to them. Oh, it will help my family save money. Oh, it will help my family's lungs. Oh, it will help my family, the elderly people in my family, not have to deal with the extremes of heat and cold, or be able to better deal with food vulnerability or the various issues that there are. And I think health and cost of living are quite big drivers, and so are children. So essentially, I think it's really powerful to be able to say to people, here are some offerings that are related to sustainability, but ultimately have cost of living and your well-being at the heart of them. And that can help people find a way to connect. And then those people want to help you with your sustainability targets and see it as an opportunity rather than a burden. And that's the problem you'll have with GDPR, anti-bribery, modern slavery, is people seeing it as an opportunity. I'm not saying people are selfish. They're not selfish. But if there's a way that they can help their family while doing something at work, then they'll do it. If what they're doing at work is reducing air pollution, reducing carbon emissions, and they can now see how that helps their children or how that helps their pocket, that's going to be much more exciting for them. So it's another really good way of embedding something in a non-traditional space that doesn't have to cost much money, because we already have learning and development and wellbeing budgets anyway. It's not an additional cost. It's just thinking creatively about how you bring in those speakers in those workshops that sort of relate back into sustainability, but without being too in their faces. And then brainstorms is something that we've done, which is really great. Again, doesn't cost any money. Once a month, once a quarter, having a space where anyone from the post room person to someone on the board can come along online or in person, depending on what works for your business. And people can have their say and ask their questions and celebrate their successes about what they're doing at home and what they're doing in the business. And we often curate and host a lot of those, but like essentially you could do it. Someone could do it. All you need is to have a decent grounding in sustainable living and ideally have an understanding of what the business is supposed to be doing. And then you can field those questions. You can make sure people get to share what they're doing, what their worries are, what their concerns are. And then the things you pick up from your staff in that way about the business and where the gaps are for the business and where the risks are for the business are super valuable. So that is super valuable. You get that fed back from whoever's hosting to the business so they can see if they want to do something about those gaps and issues and how they can do it. When they do, they go, thank you for your feedback, business. Due to these brainstorms, we've now made these changes. And people feel heard and people feel part of the business and they feel part of the transformation and the journey, and they care even more about it being successful. So A, the brainstorms give people a place to be supported and celebrated and heard. And B, if you manage to take forward any of those elements or nominate people for Green Star or Green Team of the Week as a result, again, that's another level of feeling heard and engagement. So I think those are some really useful ways. The only other thing I'd say is carbon literacy training, climate fresque. Those are kinds of ways which are quite interactive and fun that you can train your staff and get them more engaged with the conversation. But they are more sustainability and climate focused. They help them understand how it impacts them in their community, in their own home community, or they can be aimed at your industry. But again, it's one of those things where sort of charities like ours sort of will deliver that kind of training, but there are lots of other consultancies and organizations that do the same thing as well. But it's just another way of supporting your staff. And also, if you do carbon literacy training, then they get certified at the end of that. They can put it on their LinkedIn. It's part of their personal development. It's a bit more formal that stage than a lunch and learn. But it's just a question of, offering that to some of your staff, to the ones who care and who want to do that and want that for their personal development. Because ultimately, going forward, sustainability is going to be have to be at the heart of what the way all businesses think and operate. And therefore, it's a brilliant learning and development opportunity to give staff in these days where we can't afford to pay them more. Flexibility of how and where they work and really interesting and innovative learning and development opportunities is really important. So hopefully that's given some sort of free and cheap ways of really like having an impact with sustainability.
Brilliant. Oh my gosh. Every time I speak to you, there's something else that I pick up, because I just feel like the way that your organization works is full of little everyday, really actionable, like super actionable. You could just do this right now, tips and tricks and little things that, as you say, they tie it into what you do in your daily life, and you think, oh my gosh, I could totally do that. I switched a couple of years ago now. I think it was about 3 years ago. I think we were having a conversation about wrapping paper and Christmas and sellotape, and you were like, none of that is recyclable, and it's just such a small change. And from then on, I got a great big roll of brown paper and some paper tape and paper ribbons even. And every single time we have a party, kids party, whatever the presents are for, Christmas, whatever, we use that, and the kids decorate it with Sharpies, and that's our trademark thing. And it's just such a small thing, but actually it brought our family together. It's someone's birthday, so we draw pictures on the wrapping
Oh,
paper and we make our own. And it's just those little everyday things that they also give you that little dopamine hit of like,
yeah.
I really feel like that's a good thing to do. Like, and then you see sellotape and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you can't recycle any of that. Like a great big black bin bag full of stuff that's going to go into landfill, and it just keeps it in your consciousness, doesn't it? Just like that point
Yeah.
about always having it on the agenda, just to keep it in your mind all the time. And if you don't have a green team or a green star of the month,
Yeah.
well, and then it's the question why, why do we not? And how can we inspire people to do more? I think it was a year or so ago, I guess, time has flown, that you and I were having a conversation. I was talking about inclusive events and inclusive social scene, and it's a real blocker for some people at some organizations, whether it's just about meals and it's about drinks and it's after work. And
Yeah.
you threw out in off the cuff in about 2 minutes all these different things you could do. So you mentioned, and the two things that stuck with me were having someone in to give a lesson on
Yeah.
mending clothes, mending items and stuff like that. And so it's something you can do at lunchtime. Everyone gathers and they have a lesson on how to mend things. I love that. And the other one was organizing a swap shop. So bringing in, I
Yeah.
think you said it was winter coats at the time, but kids' coats, winter coats, and just have a swap shop. And it's like a social thing of,
Yeah.
oh, where did you get this? Or, oh, I really love this one, but it doesn't fit me anymore. It's not really my style anymore. Or I
Yeah.
actually bought it, but I've never really worn it, that sort of thing. And it's so good for social. And I have recommended those two things so many times. And every time I do, the organizations are like, oh my God, I'm going to do that. I'm going to organize that. So do you have any? I realize I'm putting you massively on the spot there, but do you have any little off the cuff things that people can do, just like fun, social, things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the swap shop's a really good example. Like at Christmas time, party dresses, party outfits, doesn't have to be dresses, just party wear at Christmas time is a brilliant thing to have a swap shop day for. Everyone brings in their stuff, everyone can take some stuff. And, people buy things around that season. And it's great because actually you barely wear those clothes anyway. And it's the same with kids' clothes, if I'm honest. And also, I remember at ITV, they just started a little lending library, which was really cute as well. On each of the floors, there was an area where people could bring books that they'd read and take books away, which is really lovely. But yeah, absolutely. Workshops, things like the Japanese art of gift wrapping with fabric is called furoshiki. It's super fun. You basically take like a piece of fabric or a sarong or a silk scarf or whatever, and you basically wrap your gifts in that. And there's special ways of knotting them and making them into little bags and making them swing and making them have bows but like really interesting, unusual things that this amazing skill does. And we have people who deliver those workshops in businesses as well. And definitely like learning to mend, learning to sew, learning to grow. I mean, team away days as well is a great opportunity to go, do you know what? Instead of doing the usual old usual, why don't we go to a community allotment garden for the morning, and then in the afternoon, why don't we go and, work with a repair cafe or a community hub, or, and I don't know, all learn to sew on the sewing machines for the first time in our lives or whatever it is. So I think that sort of thing is really great. And also like things like, I mean, like litter picking. Litter picking is something a lot of people want to do because it's very visual. It's not as effective as other things you could do for the environment. But the good thing is it gets people thinking about the fact that people are coming together to support the community. And it also gets people out in nature and connecting again with nature. So that's quite a nice one as well. We do a lot of sort of talks or workshops where we talk about ways to go green and save money, and people love sharing their own tips. And that's that sort of little tip swapping about, oh, I now cycle to work on a Friday and I've saved money this way, or oh, now did you know there's a loan scheme for this, or and I think all of those sorts of things are really, really useful as well. And even like having people, you might have people in your staff who are like, oh, I know how to make kimchi, and I'll do a kimchi session. Like, you could just put a list of different things and go, does anyone know how to do any of these things? And once a year, can we persuade you to like come and show the rest of us? And then that doesn't even require bringing someone else in, you know, it just requires your own staff, because that's what we've learned from our charity. Sustainability is a really weird word, because actually what it boils down to is life skills. And actually, what really most of sustainability is about is what our grandparents talked about. It's our heritage. And that is sustainability, at the heart of sustainability. So all these things, we talk about sustainable living skills, but even using a piece of fabric, a reusable piece of fabric to wrap your gifts, that's nothing new. Okay, that art has come from Japan, but I'm pretty sure, like, you know, in the past, you know, post-war, people would have, like, if they even had a gift to give, quite frankly, they gave a lot less stuff then. You know, it would have been wrapped in something else, like a t-shirt or a, you know, a cloth or whatever it was. So certainly we have a lot to remember from our own heritage, and every single culture as well has its own amazing skills. So you couldn't possibly say, oh, certain groups and demographics don't understand sustainability, aren't sustainable, or whatever. Actually, it's in the heart of every single culture, you know, especially people who are coming, you know, we see refugees coming over from Ukraine saying, what do you mean you're teaching people to sew? Surely people already know how to sew. People know how to pickle their food. People know how to reduce food waste, surely. And actually, we've lost that in this country. But there are so many cultures all around the world that it is very firmly entrenched in its history, as it is in our history, but also in the way that they live day to day now in those other countries, that those people are actually reducing waste and, you know, living in a much more balanced way, where they're spending less money. Sometimes that's for the necessity, sometimes that's part of their cultural heritage. But for whatever reason, I think sustainability as a word is extremely annoying, because ultimately it's really about common sense, life skills, and our heritage, really. And I think together, if we look at all the different ways we can reduce waste, from energy to transport to food to water to clothing, I think we can all have a massive impact. And I think we talk about DE&I, and I think it is a massive issue for people of all different backgrounds that, you know, I think especially, I'm half Iranian, you know, Iran is already besieged by the issues of climate. There are islands in the South Pacific that are going under the water. There are places that are entirely flooded at the moment. I mean, we've seen Europe going under floods, etc. We've seen UK going under floods, but lives are being lost all over the UK and Europe and the world, especially further abroad in terms of loss of life. And there are people from those countries, or who have family in those countries, who are working in your businesses. And to have no thought for climate and sustainability kind of flies in the face of caring about your staff and truly caring about the diverse cultures and people who work for you. And so I think, again, it's another really important reason to show that actually, you know, it is authentically part of what you do. And part of being authentic is having different ways for people to be able to see it within the business and engage with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that segues on perfectly to what I was going to ask you next, because the other thing that you talk about a lot is the intersection between sustainability and diversity, and actually your pet peeve of sustainability being looked at as, you know, a white middle class issue, and only, you know, if you can afford to care about sustainability, then you can care, and it's a privilege. But actually, let's talk about your mindset on that for a minute.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much it, really, which is essentially, we are currently being told that sustainability is an attack on regular people, or that it's just about solar panels and electric vehicles. And ultimately, no matter what is being said, we know that the people who have the least money are the people who are worst affected. We know that the people who have health vulnerabilities, whether that's mental or physical health vulnerabilities, are those who are worst affected. We know that if you look at the major effects of climate and high carbon lifestyles, that kind of boils down to health and finances in our day-to-day right here in the UK, right? So we know that over 50% of the about £800 increase in annual food prices per household since 2021 over 50% of that increase is down to climate change, down to flooding and droughts. We know that people who are elderly, who have health vulnerabilities, are particularly affected by the extremes of heat and cold in terms of their health. But also people who are dealing with, financial insecurity are also particularly affected by that because they have to heat and cool their homes. It costs them more money. We also know that people who are dealing with financial stresses are also disproportionately affected by the increase in food prices. Of course they are. A lot of people, especially elderly, sorry, are having to choose between heating their homes and feeding themselves. And so the idea that sustainability and climate is a white middle class thing is ridiculous. And I have an Iranian background, but if you have a Middle Eastern background, an Asian background, an African background, you're also sort of genetically disproportionately affected and vulnerable to respiratory conditions. We saw that in COVID, certain mental health conditions, and certainly eco-anxiety exacerbates that, definitely. And also air pollution makes those worse in some cases. And then other health vulnerabilities, physical health vulnerabilities like obesity and diabetes, which are not helped by the fact that we don't have the public transport we need. It's not safe to walk and cycle as much as we need. We are reliant on a car-based lifestyle, which means we're exercising less. And we're also reliant on a very heavily meat and dairy-based lifestyle, which in the last 20 years, because we follow the American example, has supersized. So we're now eating almost double the amount of meat and dairy that the General Medical Council says is safe. So what I talk about is not necessarily great. If someone wants to be vegetarian or vegan, that's fantastic. But if people can at least be supported to eat what the General Medical Council says is a safe amount of meat, rather than being sort of persuaded to eat more and more and more, persuaded to sit in their cars and not walk because it's not safe to do the other options, I think that's a problem. So I think personally, non-white communities are disproportionately affected by climate. And I believe elderly populations and other people with health vulnerabilities are disproportionately affected, including children whose lung and organ development is massively affected by air pollution, but also are really bearing the brunt of mental health and eco-anxiety issues around climate. And definitely, certainly, anyone dealing with financial issues, anyone who's dealing with poverty or really just under financial pressure is really hit hard by climate. And that often does tend to be people from non-white communities, people who have health vulnerabilities, people from the LGBTQ+ community, who are unfortunately more often than not dealing with financial stresses more than other groups. And those groups also, in the same way, would be benefited even more if we take more action on climate, and also from sustainable living becoming normalized, for it to be normal for us to go pre-loved for our clothing, for it to be normal for us to feel safe walking and cycling to school or to work, for it to be normal for us to eat, it's a packet of cards, the General Medical Council says, which is the rough size of the piece of meat you're supposed to be eating, but eat meat less often, and just eat sensible amounts of it. If we can normalize those things, and if we can share the skills that can also help us save money, like how to insulate our homes, how to mend things, how to repair things, how to make things, how to pickle things, how to do all the things that can help us reduce waste. If we can help each other not only understand, yes, I've got to do this thing, but actually what are the skills and equipment I need to do those things, and we can help with that through lunch and learns and workshops and libraries of things and all sorts of things, then actually those groups who are definitely not the white middle class stereotype can really disproportionately benefit from that support around sustainability, as well as the action on climate.
I tell you what a compelling case you make. I could listen to you for hours and hours. Let's finish off on the hub, because it is the most wonderful place. I want to be able to, hopefully you'll have shared your video by the time, and your crowdfunder by the time that this airs, because I want to be able to put a link to it so that everyone can watch your video. It is heartwarming to the absolute max, and it's beautiful what you've built. So tell us a bit more about the hub and what you've built and what your plans are next.
Thank you so much. So yeah, essentially in 2021, we got invited to go and speak at the Urban Design Summit at COP26 about this model of community hubs which bring together local people to share their knowledge and their skills and equipment and this wonderful space to live more sustainably. But really, when we say live more sustainably, we mean live healthier, live with smaller bills, live with a sense of connection to your community and being able to meet people and collaborate with people. And so in 2022, we set up a pilot for these community hubs, which would have environmental, but also social and economic needs at the heart of them. And since March 2022, it's been open in the Glades in Bromley in southeast London, and the communities of Bromley, Lewisham, Greenwich, and Croydon are the main beneficiaries. And it opens up 5 days a week for free advice and access to equipment. It has a library of things, and it puts on skills workshops 4 days a week. And that's local people coming and teaching each other how to sew, how to pickle, how to grow food, how to insulate their homes, how to upcycle one thing to another thing. It's really, really wonderful. And we have support for children and young people. We even do school trips, but we also do a lot of workshops for adults. And we have people coming to volunteer there at the hub who are refugees, who are women who've been out of work and wanting to return to work, for people with health vulnerabilities who are feeling isolated, people who are retired or elderly. They're all volunteering their skills and their knowledge to help their community. And then others are the beneficiaries as well. So we have a lot of adults coming in and some children and young people too. And we've been working really hard to make sure it's open 5 days a week, that it's in a really mainstream setting in the heart of the community, that it is reliable 5 days a week. And we go out and we deliver sort of lunch and learns and brainstorming and away days and all that sort of stuff for corporate clients, like people like Bupa or ITV or Bank of America or Eden Tree, etc., the Globe Theatre. We deliver carbon literacy training, we deliver all sorts, so that can help fund our community work in Bromley. And at the moment, we're about to launch a crowdfunder to make sure that we can run the next year of the community hub, and so that we can be starting to create what I left my job for 2 years ago, which is a blueprint, because we want to create a blueprint for these community hubs so that they can be popping up all over UK shopping centres and high streets in those vacant units that are prominent, that are at the heart of their community and are doing nothing. Because in a time where we don't have youth centres anymore, in a time where we don't have community centres anymore, where we see adults with learning difficulties, elderly people, parents of under threes, all gathering in the sort of communal spaces of shopping centres because they can't afford to heat and cool their homes, because they can't afford to pay for activities for their children or to keep themselves busy. These community hubs give people an opportunity to come together, to get creative, do artistic things, do practical things together, a safe, warm space that everyone can use wherever they are on their journey. They might just want to ask a question. They might want to just sit down with their child and do some colouring in of some nature books while they just take a breather. They might want to come in and relearn how to crochet and then start teaching younger people. We have a lot of elderly people teaching younger people how to sew, how to knit, how to crochet, how to mend. And it is a beautiful space, but it needs help with funding. And so we're looking for businesses and individuals to support us with funding so that we can continue to deliver this pilot in Southeast London and also create a blueprint that can then be shared with communities across the UK. And that's what this crowdfunder is about at the moment. And so, yeah, hopefully we can share a link to that. And if anyone is interested in seeing a little video of this community hub, seeing whether you might want one in your own shopping centre, and seeing whether maybe, you know, your community or your business might be interested in it, then please do have a look at the link that Kat's going to kindly share.
Amazing. I definitely want one. I would make so much use of that, honestly. It's things like the library of things. It's just fantastic. I want to borrow a Vax from somewhere, a carpet cleaning machine, and I don't want to buy one. But where do you do, you've got one in the library of things and all these different things that you can borrow for a period of time. It's just fantastic. And then the community element that's grown out of that is just absolutely heartwarming. It's so lovely that people have a place to go where they feel like they belong. And when you see the video, you will see exactly what I mean. And if you don't cry, you have a heart of stone. So I'm definitely going to share that. I think it's fantastic. Parisa, thank you so much for joining us. It's been, as always, fantastic. I love speaking to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kat. You're a wonderful host and I love your work. Thank you.